Today, we dive into the life of a man who changed the course of history, Nelson Mandela. We're about to embark on a journey that charts Mandela's rise from a humble background to his ascension as the first black president of South Africa. We'll explore the trials he faced during his 27 years of imprisonment and how he emerged to lead a nation towards a new era of democracy and reconciliation. But this is more than a tale of endurance and triumph. It's a story rich with lesser-known aspects and intriguing mysteries. We'll delve into clandestine meetings in the heart of London, covert negotiations and secret communications that played a pivotal role in the shaping of South Africa's future. So get ready for a history retold, one that sheds light on the obscured corners of a well-documented narrative. Join us on this journey to uncover the hidden truths behind Mandela's rise to power. Nelson Mandela, a name synonymous with resilience, began his journey in a humble setting. Born in the rural village of Mvezo, Mandela's early life was steeped in tribal customs and traditions. This rural upbringing, however, was just the beginning of a life that would defy expectations and shatter norms. Education played a pivotal role in shaping Mandela's future. He was the first in his family to attend school, a privilege that opened his eyes to the world beyond Mvezo. It was during his time at the University of Fort Hare, a hotbed of political discourse, that Mandela's political consciousness began to take root. However, it was his involvement with the African National Congress, or ANC, that solidified Mandela's commitment to the struggle against apartheid. A young Mandela, along with other emerging leaders, formed the ANC Youth League, a radical arm of the ANC that sought to transform the organization from a passive political entity to a dynamic force of change. The Youth League's vigor and passion caught the attention of the nation. Mandela's charisma, intelligence, and strategic mind quickly propelled him through the ranks, establishing him not just as a member, but as a leader. However, the peaceful protests and civil disobedience championed by the ANC were met with increasing violence and repression from the government. This repression led to a significant shift in strategy for Mandela and the ANC. Recognizing that their peaceful protests were not yielding the desired results, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the ANC. This marked a turning point in the struggle, as the peaceful resistance transitioned into an armed struggle, an avenue Mandela had hoped to avoid but deemed necessary for their cause. Mandela's activism, his unwavering dedication to the cause of freedom, and his willingness to fight for it, set him on a path that would lead to his imprisonment. However, little did he know, this path would also lead him to become one of the most influential figures in world history. In 1964, Mandela found himself confined to the harsh realities of Robben Island. He was arrested and charged with sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the government, brought before the court in what came to be known as the Rivonia trial. With Mandela's resounding declaration of, "It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die," the stage was set for his long-term imprisonment. Life in Robben Island was a stark contrast to the freedom he had known. Mandela spent 18 grueling years in this prison, his days filled with hard labor and his nights spent in a tiny cell. Yet even within these bleak confines, Mandela's spirit remained unbroken. He emerged as a leader among the prisoners, creating a university behind bars where debates on politics and strategy were held. But how did the world outside the prison walls remain informed about the plight of Mandela and his fellow prisoners? The answer lies in their ingenious secret communication system. Using a method called the bucket system, messages were written on tiny scraps of paper wrapped in plastic and hidden in matchboxes, which were then smuggled out of prison. Mandela's influence did not stop at his fellow prisoners. He had an unexpected impact on some of the prison guards as well. With his dignity and respect, he managed to soften the attitudes of a few of these wardens, demonstrating that even in the most unlikely of places, change was possible. His time in prison, however, was just the beginning of a larger struggle. The world was watching, and the pressure for Mandela's release was building. But the journey to freedom was far from over, and the path ahead was filled with secret negotiations and a determination to end apartheid. His years on Robben Island were not just a period of confinement, but a testament to the unyielding spirit of a man who would not be broken, a man who would become a symbol of hope and freedom for an entire nation. While Mandela was imprisoned, the world outside was not silent. A global outcry echoed in every corner, demanding the release of this towering figure of resistance. The international community was not a mere spectator. They rallied behind Mandela, pressuring the South African government through diplomatic channels and economic sanctions. The United Nations, countless international organizations, and citizens worldwide voiced their opposition to apartheid, urging the release of Mandela. The rallying cry was loud: "Free Mandela!" This global anti-apartheid movement was instrumental in shaking the very foundations of the oppressive regime. Back in South Africa, the National Party was in a quandary. Internally, the country was on the brink of a civil war. And externally, it was becoming a pariah on the world stage. The political landscape was changing rapidly, and the National Party was forced to reevaluate its stance. The gears had begun to turn, leading them to a decision that would change the course of South African history. They decided to negotiate. But these negotiations were far from public. They were shrouded in secrecy, taking place behind closed doors and away from prying eyes. Mandela was whisked away to clandestine meetings with government officials and influential individuals. One such secret rendezvous was in London, where the future of South Africa was discussed in hushed tones. And London wasn't the only place where these covert discussions transpired. Other secret negotiations took place, each one a piece of the puzzle that would eventually form the picture of a democratic South Africa. These meetings were fraught with tension, each party vying for their vision of the future. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing was clear: change was inevitable. These covert negotiations were the stepping stones to Mandela's eventual release. But they were more than that. They were the beginnings of a dialogue, a conversation that would lead to the dismantling of apartheid and the birth of a new, democratic South Africa. On February 11, 1990, Mandela walked free, but the journey to democracy was far from over. As the world watched, Nelson Mandela emerged from Victor Verster prison, not as a broken man, but as a beacon of hope, ready to lead his nation towards a better future. His release marked the beginning of a tumultuous period of negotiations and power shifts that would eventually steer South Africa towards democracy. The African National Congress, with Mandela at its helm, entered into negotiations with the National Party. The goal was to dismantle the system of apartheid and forge a new constitution that would ensure equal rights for all South Africans, regardless of their race. These talks were far from smooth sailing. They were marked by intense disagreements, political violence, and the ever-looming threat of civil war. Mandela's role in these negotiations was pivotal. He stood as the voice of reason amidst the chaos, advocating for peace and unity when others were ready to resort to violence. His unwavering commitment to reconciliation and justice was instrumental in keeping the talks on track. The negotiations culminated in the historic elections of April 1994. For the first time in the country's history, all South Africans, irrespective of their race or color, were allowed to vote. The election was a monumental task, fraught with logistical challenges and threats of violence, yet under Mandela's leadership, the process unfolded with remarkable calm. The world watched in awe as millions of South Africans, many of whom had never cast a ballot before, lined up to vote. The scenes of unity and hope that played out across the country were a powerful testament to the resilience of the South African people and their yearning for a democratic future. The election results were a resounding endorsement of Mandela's vision of a united and democratic South Africa. The ANC won a sweeping victory, and on May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first black president of South Africa. Against all odds, Mandela led South Africa to its first taste of true democracy. Mandela's presidency marked a new era for South Africa. As the first black president, he faced the gargantuan task of healing a nation scarred by decades of apartheid. Mandela's approach was one of reconciliation, not revenge. He set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a unique body that sought to address past atrocities not through punishment, but through public acknowledgement and forgiveness. Despite the deep-seated divisions, Mandela's efforts bore fruit. He achieved significant strides in housing, education, and economic policies, often overlooked in popular narratives. But let's also delve into the less explored aspects of his presidency. Did you know that Mandela championed South Africa's bid for the 2010 World Cup as a means of uniting the nation through sport? Or that his relationship with global leaders often led to unexpected alliances, reshaping international politics? Mandela's presidency left an indelible mark on South Africa and the world. But remember, history is often more than meets the eye.